There we go. We're live, and I am going to start this in 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tenant Talks. This is our 5th airing of this new weekly web series that we launched here at COVE recently, and we sit down with a new member of the COVE community each week to learn a little bit more about their products and the projects that they're working on. This is a special week as we're now in the middle of Oceans Week here in Halifax. Yesterday was World Oceans Day, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of the celebration of what the ocean gives back to humanity. And we're proud to support the innovation built right here at COVE that can make a big impact on improving the health of our global ocean. We're expanding Tenant Talks for this special week to 4 episodes. And today I'm very excited to welcome 2 guests for a double header. And we're going to sit down and chat with them to learn more about what they're up to. And just before I get into introductions, I want to just do a brief housekeeping note. Feel free to jump in the chat, the Q&A, ask questions at any point, and I will relay those questions to the speaker. And in between guests, there's going to be about a 5-minute break between switching from the first guest to second. So I actually have some trivia and some prizes, some great COVE swag to give away. And so stay tuned and keep engaged. So I'm very excited to welcome our first guest, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years now. And please welcome Andrew Boswell. He's the CEO of Rimot.
It's good to be here, Kyle. Thanks for inviting us.
No, thanks for joining. You guys have been in operation now for what, 3 years, roughly?
We're going on number 4. Time flies.
So maybe we can give us a little bit of background information about yourself as an entrepreneur, what led you to start Rimot, and where you guys are at now.
Sure. So grew up in Bedford, not far from Halifax, and took me to Dalhousie University, where I did a physics degree. But at the same time, I was starting to do some entrepreneurial things, and I went off and balanced that with a business degree. But I've spent most of my career in some combination of, IT, telecommunications, management consulting. And so, had the opportunity to work with the firm we now know as Accenture. It was Anderson Consulting in the days I was on it. Spent most of that time on the global telecoms team and got to travel the world while living in Halifax, which I thought was a pretty darn good combination. And then we went off and started a national IT company, myself and another. I was sort of on the ground floor and grew that to quite a size in less than 5 years. But the basis of Rimot really came from the last company that I owned and ran, which was in the wireless communication space. And what we found was that we could service our customers so much better if we could remotely monitor their equipment. And some of that equipment, like barcode scanners and Wi-Fi networks, are easy to monitor, and we could deliver great service because we could call them and tell them when there was an impending problem and how we were heading it off, as opposed to them calling us when there was a crisis. So we set out to solve this for other systems, and that just sort of snowballed from solving it for ourselves to other people expressing interest to eventually becoming its own company that we now know as Rimot.
Nice. You're based here in Dartmouth now. Team size is what at this moment?
We're about 14 now, including co-op students.
Wow, that's a big expansion for sure. Very quick as well. So I know you have a really interesting presentation. We should probably jump into that right away so we can kind of get some background of your first products and then some of the more interesting things that you've really established in the last few months.
Yeah. Well, this whole interesting situation we find ourselves in with the pandemic has really had quite an impact on our business. The whole world is trying to figure out how to do things remotely right now, and certainly what we're doing, remote monitoring with our first product, has taken on a whole new level of strategic importance. But it's also caused us to kind of step back and see what we could do to directly put our remote monitoring platform to work, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about that too as well.
That's exciting. I guess the pandemic really companies that were able to move quickly, like Rimot, are able to kind of seize those opportunities as they take some of the experience that they've learned in other sectors and apply it to the healthcare space?
Absolutely. I think this whole situation has caused people to make more decisions with more urgency than we've perhaps ever seen, and had to do so with less information as well.
Awesome. So let's jump into the presentation. I think you have it queued up.
I do.
Perfect.
That's
good.
Okay. Well, maybe I can just start by just talking a little bit about what it is that Rimot does. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all about making sure that critical things work, and that's whether it's a piece of equipment or a high value team member that they're able to do what they need to do, particularly in a time of need. And so when we're talking to our customers and potential customers about why remote monitoring is important, we're normally talking about some combination of these factors. It's either about making sure that those systems are as hardened and as reliable as possible by reducing downtime and the issues with them, or it's about reducing maintenance effort and cost, which is taken on an even greater twist with the pandemic, because the default in a lot of scenarios is that when something fails, we put a field engineer in a vehicle or on a plane or whatever it is, and he or she goes and diagnoses the problem and repairs it. Well, what we've seen in the pandemic is that in a lot of cases, those field engineers just can't be deployed. They either aren't able to travel, or we were talking to one of our partners, and they look after hospitals, and they physically were not allowed on site. So it means that it's not just about reducing the effort, but it's also about reducing the time that people need to be spending in the field maintaining equipment. And that's certainly true with the offshore as well. And just generally trying to mitigate risk, which is what everyone's trying to do right now. If we have better information about what's going on, we can make better decisions. So we've gone away and built a whole business around this, and we've built it with really kind of three key tenets: easy, insight, and value. So these kind of drive every decision we make every day, which is we want to make sure that it's super easy to use and deploy. At the end of the day, we're really all about providing data. It's about providing data so that people can make better decisions in the moment, and also to be able to look back and do that. And because we're using great new technology, particularly IoT technology, industrial IoT technology, we can do it we can provide a turnkey solution and make it affordable so people can actually go out and deploy it in places where they probably couldn't have put a business case before. So what we built, it took a couple of years actually of investment to build out our remote monitoring platform. And really it kind of is in two stages. The first stage of building the platform was about getting the data, because if you have equipment or people working remotely and there isn't insight to what they're doing, then the first thing you need to do is get that insight. So we've built an entire platform that goes right from sensors to what we call an outpost, which is our edge computing box, which can ingest sensor information, can do processing on it in the field, and then manage the communications link up, whether it's cellular or soon by satellite, to our cloud, where we do more we bring in more data at the cloud level, do some more analytics, and ultimately make it valuable to users on the device of their choice through our portal. But also, nobody sits around and watches portals all day, we know, so we can alert based on when thresholds are exceeded or there's something that needs to have some attention paid to it. And we spend a lot of time, of course, everyone's concerned about security, we put a lot of time into end-to-end security underneath all that. So that's what we built, and we're building out specific solutions for specific verticals. We are an as-a-service business model. So the first service we created actually was near and dear to what launched X-Wave Remote originally, which was that for wireless transmitter sites. So these are what I was talking earlier about, in my previous life how there were things we couldn't monitor. One of them are wireless communication systems, private systems. So we're not talking about cellular, we're talking about systems that are being used. In this case, this shot might look familiar to some people. This is Chebucto Head at the mouth of Halifax Harbour. So obviously being used for marine communications. They're used widely for two-way radio for policing. They're used in large manufacturing facilities for critical voice and data communications. So what we found is that actually it's been studied globally. There's a benchmark study that says systems that are remotely monitored experience 50% fewer outages than those that aren't. And that's a big, that has a huge impact on some of the things I mentioned earlier about downtime and risk and the implications of that for users who count on these systems every day. So we've created our first offering, and it allows us to be able to go out and monitor sites like this one. We are deploying with the Canadian Coast Guard on the East Coast, and allow you to see information on the device of your choice. So in this case, it's a smartphone. So it provides really fresh levels of insight available in a variety of different ways continuously, and that's pretty unprecedented. Normally, it's a more traditional system that only a limited number of people can see under certain circumstances. And we've now have customers and deployments and channel partners across Canada and the U.S. We've signed a partnership agreement with Motorola Solutions, who's a big player in a part of this. And we're heading into some new spaces as well, like broadcast and e-navigation, which are all leveraging the same focus on wireless communication sites. So I think people probably know us for RimotRF. What I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about today was actually remote health. This ties into the interesting times that we live in. When this whole pandemic started, we went into a discovery process with dozens and dozens of organizations, and COVE was actually very helpful to us in finding us some people to talk to early on. And what people consistently came back and told us was that they were very concerned about the safety of their workers. At that point, it was particularly essential workers who were having to show up to work every day, and they wanted to be able to make sure that they were doing everything they can to make sure that only healthy people were entering the site. And at that point, it was a very manual process where people were, at the entryways to their buildings, having people with a handheld thermometer and a clipboard, taking people's temperature and asking them key questions. And they said, we've got to find a way to make that sustainable. And that's really the genesis of where remote health came from, which is to apply our remote monitoring platform to that problem. And so what we've built, that was an idea in a discovery process 10 weeks ago. Development started 6 weeks ago, and we just did our first test field deployment last week, which is pretty unbelievable. Big credit to our team for pulling that off. But urgency is key here. We've seen how even just one person in New Brunswick can trigger a whole situation. So the organizations we're working with are very anxious to find capable, sustainable solutions. So what we've built is once again, in the spirit of a turnkey service, we've got the screening stations, which are deployed at natural entry points to a facility, which do two things. One, they take the person's temperature and they administer the questionnaire. And based on the results of that, you get a go, no go. That information is monitored over a cellular network, so you don't have to worry about whether or not there's network at the site or whether you can access it. We bring that back, which makes for very quick deployments without any pre-engineering. We bring it back to the cloud, we do our normal processing on it, and make it available through a portal with alerting. So ultimately, organizations get to, the people on the site get information in a contactless fashion to be able to make decisions as to who does or does not enter the building. But importantly, if you're managing hundreds or in some cases thousands of sites across the country, you can see in real time how things are going in terms of people entering your facility and where problems are and being alerted to when those problems happen. So just to make a little bit, zoom in here a little bit on the fast deployment, the screening station, what you'll see is that there's a thermal camera at the top, which is able to measure body temperature. There's a questionnaire screen, which is where the questions are delivered, and a spirit of contactless, and I suspect we'll see more of these in our lives to come. We're using foot pedals so that people can respond to the questions, which really minimizes the cleaning protocols associated with this. So, its use is pretty straightforward. It's a person approaches the screening station, their body temperature is captured. They get a question on the questionnaire screen. They respond to the foot pedal. That repeats, and pass-fail is determined sort of a red-green scenario. So if you'd like, I'd like to kind of just, talk's cheap. I'd like to show you that in operation.
Andrew, just jumping in here, what type of questions would be something that might be asked during this process on the screen?
So it varies by employer and jurisdiction, but the questions are commonly, are you displaying any of these symptoms? Because body temperature is, while an important indicator, not the only one, and that symptoms list tends to change. And there's also questions around, travel, typically, and whether you've been tested for COVID, those kinds of questions. And it's really the combination of those two factors which give you the best information to be able to make a good decision.
That's interesting. And then I guess the enforcer, the health and safety officer, who may be sitting somewhere else remotely from an office, off-site from a construction or an area where there's lots of close contact, will get these reports with all this information that they can make decisions off of on the compliance, things like that.
Yeah, most of the organizations we're talking to are putting these where there's a manned location. So there's usually someone who's, there's somebody already in place who would be making the decisions as to what happens next. And the protocols vary wildly by employer and by industry as to what happens next. In some cases, we're seeing people that if there's a failure on either of these points, they're immediately asked to exit the building, and there's a protocol as to where they seek medical assistance. For other people, there's a sort of sanitized holding area where they're kept for further help. So it varies significantly, but generally they're at a manned location at this point. The other piece of this, of course, and a recurring theme, is that we bring that back to the central monitoring portal, which gives you all kinds of statistics about what's going on, what has gone on. And there's an ability to go back historically. So if you had a problem, 10 days ago, you can go back and see very quickly, which is important because the model of a person with a handheld thermometer and a clipboard, most of that data doesn't see the light of day. And if it does, it's only it's difficult to get it. So we're bringing all that data together, along with other data, by the way, around ambient data, ambient temperature where it was taken and weather of the day, so that over time, that data will prove to be the more valuable. So I would just highlight what we've done that I believe is different than there's certainly lots of other smart people in the world who are working on solutions to this big problem. And what's different and what we're being told is different about our approach is the fact that we've got both the body temperature and the questionnaire being captured in a contactless fashion. We've got that management portal, which brings back all that information, makes it available easily currently for what's going on currently and historically. We do bring in other ambient data, and I think we'll be bringing in more as those data sets it becomes more clear what data sets are helpful to us to managing this longer term. It's on the platform, which it's not our first day out, and it's easy to deploy and use because of that whole structure. We are adding some other things because of the intelligence of the platform which will add even more value. But we're going to get out what we've got here first. So we're just doing our first test deployment last week. A actually a Nova Scotia manufacturer, which is where we're getting, our greatest traction initially is in transportation, including ocean tech. So, think about how much work D&D went to get a ship out of the harbor with their crew being safe. So people boarding ships, but even on shoreside facilities who are doing maintenance and provisioning. So there's certainly an opportunity there. And the other place is interestingly manufacturing and distribution. Now, as the economy continues to open up, I believe we'll see other sectors go from talking about it to acting, but those are some lead spaces for us. So I'll just round out. I just want to touch on what we were actually planning on doing before this pandemic hit, which was to have our second service and our second offering in the platform being focused on ships. You're probably aware that upwards of 40 or 50% of the critical equipment and systems on board a ship is not monitored, and it's once again it requires someone some sort of technician or engineer to be deployed to either monitor it, to see if it's performing accurately, or to repair it. What we want to do is to apply our platform. You'll see a recurring theme here: apply our platform to be able to collect that data initially, but also to add data analytics and machine learning to that data to be able to allow people on board the ship to make better decisions, and hopefully do so with fewer people, which is important. If we can leave some of the experts ashore, we can reduce the number of people that we have to put offshore, which is these days not only a cost issue but a health issue. But as importantly, bring that back ashore so that we can bring a composite view of what's going on across the fleet, and be able to see broader patterns. So it might be that we might see across the fleet that we're spending too much time maintaining a certain class of equipment, but not enough on something else. So we can adjust that. We can also start to see what operational patterns, how the ship is being operated might impact everything from, the maintenance requirements on the equipment to its fuel economy. So that's what we're in the early stages of going from here. So that sort of concludes what I was kind of hoping to get on the table around what we're up to with our three services.
Thanks, Andrew. That is very interesting, and an interesting pivot or direction change with all this happening, and a real credit to your team that you have built to be able to respond that quickly and offer an actual product, a demo in such short a period of time is quite impressive.
Yeah, they did an amazing job. Really proud of them. So next up is we'll be taking this to market.
Nice. That is going to be exciting to watch for sure. And if we can help, or anybody listening can help out, I'm sure you would be very appreciative of that support to get it to market as well.
Absolutely.
And then just a general theme on the remote monitoring aspect of it applies to so many industries. Do you think it has accelerated the need or the uptake from industries with what's happening with COVID-19? You're going to see an acceleration of adoption for remote monitoring technologies? Absolutely.
It might be a little provocative to say, but I think the traditional break fix model, which is employed by so many industries, is this is the end of it. And I think it's really the technologies existed to improve remote monitoring and control with the advent of industrial IoT. It's been pretty mature now for a while, and people have just been in a pattern of behavior. But this has caused a lot of revisiting, I think, on both business and personal levels for a lot of people. And we're going to see an adoption of technology at a significant rate to allow for remote monitoring and management, for sure.
Sets up well for you and your team.
Well, I think it's actually good for the companies as well, because it's going to they're going to end up with more resilient systems, and I think reduced effort and cost to do so, which is going to be let alone the safety considerations which this is forced on us which I guess we're going to be living with for a while.
Well, that's great to hear. I don't have any other questions. If people want to jump in now, would be a great time to ask a question. Otherwise, thank you very much, Andrew. This was great. Your contact information is on the screen here. So if anyone wants to follow up, they can do so directly with yourself. But thank you very much for joining Tenant Talks. This has been great.
Okay, listen, Kyle, thanks very much for inviting us. I would just end by saying, I think one of the reasons why we started Rimot was it's a great time to build a startup in Nova Scotia, and particularly in Halifax and Ocean Tech, between what's going on with Ocean Supercluster and others. But COVE has been pretty foundational in the Ocean Tech space, I think, to has brought a really good focus of we've always done really great ocean technology here, and has really twinned that with a great focus on let's get out and commercialize it around the world. And I give COVE and you guys a lot of credit for doing some really great things. And we're really excited to have been part of it. We continue to be part of it.
Thanks, Andrew. That I see Jim and Sheila are watching, so I'm sure they'll appreciate those kind words. Thank you very much.
Well earned.
Awesome. So I'm going to, I don't know if you want to stick around, I'll put you as an attendee. And then I'm going to bring in Scott Tobin from Xeos. So let's see if this worked. It worked great in the test run. Scott should be joining any moment. Hey, Scott. There we go. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Scott?
Good. You're coming in loud and clear. It's great.
Great. That's good. The mic is working. We're laughing here.
So I did say we're going to do some trivia. I figured you might be able to win a prize as well if you're good at this these facts and fun tidbits.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
We do have some nice COVE swag. I think you just picked up yours.
I did. Yeah.
This past week.
Coldest water.
So these are very, very popular. Reduces plastic bottle consumption, and so perfect fit for World Oceans Week. And if people want to participate in chat, the way it'll work is I'll ask a trivia question. I have 3 or 4 ready to go. And whoever just replies back in chat the fastest will win the prize. And we can either mail it out or you can come pick it up next time you're at COVE. So I'm going to go with some general ocean themes, some scientific stuff that is less kind of general. So just kind of give it a broader audience of who may know this. So the Marianas Trench, as we know, is one of the most interesting ecological places in the ocean. What temperatures, you can kind of, any point in the range, what temperature is the Marianas Trench?
Good question.
Where's Candace from RBR So Bruce Fraser actually nailed it with 1 to 4 degrees Celsius, which is quite chilly.
It's pretty specific.
Bruce,
I think Bruce did his research.
Yeah, Bruce is sharp. So let's see if the next one here. So we'll go more to the ecological side, and a walrus is a very iconic animal, and their tusk, it can grow quite long. What range? So what can it grow up to? How many feet can a walrus tusk? A narwhal's tusk grow to? Not a walrus, a narwhal. 2 meters. We have 1 answer so far. So Lisa actually got the correct answer with 10 feet. So very nice. Feel free to come by COVE anytime to pick that up because I know you're in the neighborhood. And then a bull shark, very large animal. The pregnancies last a long time. How long does a pregnancy of a bull shark last? For the last bottle. Look at that. Nailed it. The first guess was correct at 11 months. So I will connect with you all afterwards, and I have your email address on file, so I'll just follow up and get your prizes out to you. So now we can jump into our second guest, who I'm very excited to chat with today, Scott Tobin from Xeos Technologies. So welcome, Scott, and thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Kyle. I appreciate the invite here today. Absolutely. And yeah, thanks for everybody else tuning in here and giving me a little bit of your day, for sure.
Awesome. So I know Xeos has a kind of a storied history here in Dartmouth. Been in the community for a long time, and maybe you can give us a little bit more about your background, your personal background, what led you to Xeos, and some more information on the history as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So start with kind of personally, I graduated from Dalhousie University in June of 2017, so about 3 years ago now, and with a degree in mineral resource engineering. So after finishing school, I worked with a professor of mine for about a year, testing rock samples and basically blowing up rocks. So that was a good time. But yeah, after that, I was looking for some opportunities in the area, and you know, anything with involved in engineering or sales or a bit of both. And this opportunity came up in the area, so I jumped on board, and it's been quite the ride ever since. So that was 2 years ago. I joined Xeos. It'll be 2 years ago on Thursday, actually. So yeah, it's time is flying by for sure. There's been lots of changes even since I started there.
Fantastic. So the company is actually just recently grown. I see you're in a new office, so lots of exciting stuff going on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about 20 people now. We were 14, I think, 14 or 15 when I joined. So there's been some additions and a few subtractions since I joined. But yeah, the company overall has grown quite well and yeah, impressively in my opinion in the last few years. And we're doing a lot of good things and taking the right steps, I think, to kind of make our presence a little bigger in the ocean space here and create more relationships as we go.
Absolutely. And I've seen that firsthand with your interaction here at COVE, because I know you work closely with a lot of other tenants.
Yeah.
And I think the new products that you guys have offered in the last few years, plus some of this collaboration with the existing community, might contribute a bit to that success. So perhaps we can jump into your presentation. We can get an overview of the products and learn a bit more what kind of projects you guys are working on.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Get a screen share going here. This is always fun. What is this, computer? How does this work? What is this again? I think we want.
Any luck?
Yeah, sorry, folks.
It did work.
It did work before,
for
sure. Confirmed.
That's right. Twice, actually.
Yeah, twice. I was just saying, Andrew was saying before this, it's all fun and games until you actually hit the road.
Until you go live.
Until you go
live.
Right. Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. It's a famous boxer once said. All right. So we're screen sharing here. Are we up here?
Yep, you're live. Yep.
We are live. Great. So we can start. And we have the right one up there, the big screen, or is it the?
It's good now. There you go.
Okay, we're good. Okay, perfect. All right. So thanks, Kyle, for the introduction and going over a few things there. Just to start off here. So what we do at Xeos, kind of with a broad stroke here, is design and manufacture oceanographic equipment, including beacons, data relays, and sensors. So fitting the theme of going remote here today with these presentations. We design and manufacture mostly asset recovery beacons. So I'll get into the actual products a little bit as we move in here. But the idea is to give our customers a little bit of insight and some alerts or communications with assets they have that are offshore in the ocean, collecting data or missions of other kinds. So as I mentioned, we've been in business for 16 years. We're 20 people. We've got 3 offices now. We just opened our new one last week, actually. So it's been quite an interesting bit of time here between COVID and jumping over those hurdles as they come, and opening a new office and hiring a few new people. So it's been a really interesting time, and everybody's on their toes and doing well. So our oceans product base, like I said, the mooring recovery beacons and offshore asset recovery is kind of what we specialize in. And of course, the data telemetry. So actually sending data back from some remote sensors and offshore packages and assets. We also provide GPS tracking equipment and other satellite data, Argos and GNSS products as well. And a few of our flagship products here is the XM series. So that's Xeos Micro for anybody following along at home. And we offer these beacons in kind of an array of technologies and communications. So we've got Iridium, of course, and an Argos beacon, a VHF beacon, and an LED flasher. So these are all made of grade 9 titanium, submersible to 11,000 meters. And they typically go underwater for 1 to 3 years as the sensor package or whatever they're on does its job. And when it's released to the surface, these units will awaken with a surface sensor, and then they will send a signal over satellite or flash a light or broadcast a VHF signal, depending on which product you have. This is our Apollo beacon. So this is kind of our flagship product right now. So at the time it was released, it was the only Iridium GPS beacon with an LED flasher built in. So that was a great value add for a lot of our customers who were using 2 beacons for 2 different jobs at that time, and were able to only have to worry about 1 product doing those jobs. So just less maintenance, easier turnaround times, and things like that really help them. So again, these are titanium, and some of these can go underwater for up to 10 years. And they have another feature that you can actually configure them over Bluetooth. So if you have these in your hand on a ship, post-deployment or even pre-deployment, we have an app that you can download, and you can configure settings over Bluetooth. So you can change report rates, you can turn flashers on and off, you can get data from it like battery level, and upload new firmware. So there's a lot of neat tools that we have for these that make it a little easier on the users. This is our surface version of the beacon, so we call it the Rover. And fun fact about the Rover, we actually recovered a surface vehicle in the Southern Ocean last week. So it was on a vehicle that was very expensive, and I will say that it rhymes with glaive wider, and it was in a place where it wasn't getting enough sunlight to power itself on a consistent basis. So they actually lost some signals from it, and of course, at that time, everybody was very concerned on getting it back. So they contacted us and Mission Control for the actual surface vehicle, and we ended up getting it picked up in a matter of hours. They contacted a fishing boat, and with reports from the Rover beacon, they ended up scooping it up. So that was a win for us and them and everybody else involved. This is another similar idea. It's a GPS and Iridium surface tracker, we call it. So OSCAR stands for Oil Spill Kit Emergency Response. So the idea is that a ship or an oil rig or somebody in the ocean at all that may be at risk of having an oil spill or any effluent spill really of any kind that would follow a surface current would be able to deploy these in a very fast manner. So you pull that pin out of the OSCAR, it will come to life, and just take its GPS position rapidly, send it out over Iridium to the end user on an email or a computer, and you can get an idea, hopefully, of where the edge of the oil spill or the effluent spill might be. They're also used for current tracking and things like that. And fun fact with the Oscar, it was actually used for iceberg tracking at one point. So there was some people in Labrador deploying them out of helicopters actually, and tracking icebergs as they moved along the coast. So that was an interesting job for us. And this is a little different thing for us, was to actually develop a sensor for the ocean science community. So this is a wave height sensor that we deploy on, it's designed to be deployed on existing buoys. So there's actually a navigational buoy in the Harbour, the Halifax Harbour, that has one of these on it right now. And we've gone out ourselves and put them on there, and we're by no means professional technicians, so it just kind of speaks to the ease of use for this. That was the idea behind the whole thing. So we've seen a lot of good results with this, and it's actually a GNSS based product, so there's no accelerometer in it or anything like that. It was something we designed to be kind of added, like I said, to existing buoys, and sends data out over Iridium. So you could have this deployed in something in the middle of the ocean if you wanted to, and you would still get those updates going to your email inbox or onto our website as you need the data. This is a Hermes, the Hermes device, we call it. So this is a portable handheld device that is designed to receive Iridium messages. So if you're out in a boat and trying to find your sensor package bobbing around in the water and don't have internet access or cellular service out there, you can use this handheld device to actually get those messages sent right there in real time. And it has a GPS inside of it actually, so it will actually calculate the position of itself and the target and give you a range and like a heading to go find it. So it actually gives a little bit of practical use at the time, and has been very handy for a lot of people. Fun fact with the Hermes, it was used by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans last fall. They were in the Gulf of St. Lawrence deploying and recovering floating whale monitoring buoys, listening for right whales there, and they used this Hermes device to get those buoys back every day. So that was a really cool project we were able to do with them, and we're thankful for them as well for giving that a whirl. So this is part two, is what I labeled cool stuff, kind of self-explanatory, but we'll whirl through a couple projects here that we have on the go right now or have done recently. So Kyle, to your point, having this space here at COVE and meeting some other tenants and getting to learn about their needs and what work they're doing right now and how we can help them. Actually, this project actually arose from some of those connections. And so there's a company called CMAR. It's an organization that's actually right beside us here, Center for Marine Applied Research. And they're a subsidiary of Perennia, I believe. And so we stepped out of our comfort zone a little bit with this one, for sure. We're usually just in the business of making the hardware and selling it to people that would integrate it on buoys and systems like this. But we actually took on the project to actually get a buoy, put all this equipment on it, and use it in a way that was helpful to them. So we put our Brizo wave height sensor on it, and a weather station and a sea temperature sensor, and actually wired all these things together. And the Brizo itself, so our wave height sensor, sends out the data from all these sensors. So this is currently deployed right now at an aquaculture site here in Nova Scotia, down Jordan Bay. And it allows us, but also the operators of the site and CMAR themselves, to monitor sea state and weather and sea temperature and a few other things in real time. So they use this buoy to actually monitor their site, and there's a few more on the way to them right now. So that's been really exciting for us and something we hope to continue for sure. And another great use for our products here, this is one of my personal favorite projects to work on, is AUV Tracking and Communications. So to the point of going remote, again, we're seeing more and more ocean science programs and OSHA data being collected by AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles. So a lot of people are moving towards this idea of having autonomous sensors and vehicles that house them, instead of deploying buoys and moorings and going out into ship and having to deploy them and recover them. So we see on the left there, this is a Hugin AUV that actually is operated by Fugro. A couple fine lads there dropping some batteries in, and then you can see on the yellow arrow there is one of our Apollo beacons. So that's actually on their vehicle and is there for like a backup tracker. So if the vehicle were to lose power, or every time it surfaces, really, they'll get a ping and know exactly where it is. And then we work with a company called ISE as well. They're on the West Coast. They actually have an office right beside us here as well. And you can see there's a metal fin there on the top picture with a little tiny glass and metal piece beside the big black cylinder there. That's actually one of our beacons as well. So these vehicles are very big and very expensive, and things like the beacons that we make allows people to see them when they surface and get them back, which is obviously very important to them. Another cool project, we were working with a group out of Norway, and it's actually headed by the University of Tromsø. So they're monitoring some sea state conditions and looking at biodiversity and things that live in the ocean in some unexplored parts up near Greenland and the Northwest Passage and things like that. So they're actually using our Rover beacons on their floating platforms as well. So they've got 5 or 6 of them up there, excuse me, and are using our GPS Iridium trackers to follow their path, kind of through floating sea ice up north, and are using them to get them back as well. So another recent story to come out from one of our customers at Aarhus University in Denmark. So believe it or not, all the way up there, this was actually during the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian. So they were experiencing some rough sea states up in Denmark. It was close to there where the deployment was, and they had a mooring break free and float to the surface. So as you can see there, there's just a little kind of few floats bobbing around there, and you can see our kilo tracker there on the top picture, that white cylinder. That was the saving grace for them. So they had a sensor package that broke free and came to the surface, and our kilo gave them a chance and the ability to go out and get it, and they recovered it successfully. So we're very happy to hear that from them as well. And another one here close to home. So this is the project I mentioned earlier, the navigation buoy in the Halifax Harbour, this red buoy. Some of you might recognize that. There's red and green ones out in the harbour and a few other wacky ones. So our wave height sensor is actually deployed on that one up there. So you can see the black cable into the connector. Actually got one right here. So they're very small in size and can be deployed on these existing buoys, and we've done a few projects with the Halifax Pilotage Authority here. So the idea was kind of born out of getting some wave data out of places that wouldn't traditionally be great or even warrant a full data buoy being deployed. So there's the Pilotage Authority needs to know sea states at certain times, so they know if it's safe or not to go out and switch ships for the pilots, and just to know for general harbor data to tell people on approaches and things like that what the sea state looks like. So they use some of our equipment to do that, and it's a little graph there. We actually host all the data ourselves on our website. So it's another tool that our customers get to use. And there's another interesting one here. There's a professor at Dalhousie University, Eric Oliver, who is doing some drifter comparisons and doing some research up in Newfoundland and Labrador. So he was using some of our drifters and some other manufacturers and just following coastal currents and seeing how everything performed and what some typical patterns would look like. And we loaned him a couple of units and he got to use those for his project. So we were really happy with the results of that one as well. You can see some of those colored lines are Oscar drifters with the drogue attached there. So they track very well along the coast. And it was another cool project because we didn't, at that time, hadn't seen much of people using our equipment for current monitoring. We designed the product to be an oil spill kind of surface tracker, and then it's taken off into really more of something that's used for this. So it was another thing that we saw come up that wasn't really in the plans, but it just goes to show what kind of innovation is around and what people could use equipment for that sometimes doesn't even come to mind for people who make it. So that wraps it up for my slideshow. There's a few other points here. Maybe if you want to go over, Kyle, but that's for the slideshow. That's all we had.
Thanks, Scott. That's an interesting piece. I'm always fascinated by what you guys are doing with the beacons because if you looked at the size of those, I'm just going to make this screen a little bit smaller here. When you look at the size of some of those AUVs, like the Hugin and the ISE stuff,
Right.
your beacon is like a toothpick on those, but
Exactly.
it's a redundant, it's almost like an insurance plan.
Of course. Yeah.
And
it
can save their.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's kind of it's interesting from our point of view how all that kind of integrates together, and you provide some redundancy in case their systems fail.
Of course, yeah, and it is interesting because we designed that as a redundant tracker, and now we're seeing some new AUV manufacturers get to the point of needing a pressure tolerant, like a depth rated communications device. So something that we designed to be a redundant tracker really has taken on a new life as the main line for communication with some operators and manufacturers to their AVs. So we've gone down that avenue now and have seen again learned a lot ourselves about what they can do, just answering questions from customers. Nice.
One thing I know from you personally is you rarely ever say no. So it allows you to get into some of these creative opportunities that you might not have previously thought about. So it's quite interesting for me.
Yeah, absolutely. We say sometimes we're accommodating to a fault. At times we're always have our ears open. That's how a lot of our products are born. We focus on listening to the problems of our customers and users in the space, and sometimes that does result in a brand new product that sees potential that we never saw ourselves. So it's always useful for us to keep our ears open and use our engineering power to its advantage for sure.
Sweet. So on that note, we're going to wrap up, but I guess you guys are very interested in collaborating with companies. So if anyone's listening, feel free to reach out and see where it goes. Awesome. So thanks, Scott. And thanks everyone for watching. We're back again on Thursday with another doubleheader, this time with Mark Berry from Pro Oceana Systems and then Bruce Stover from Precise Design. So we're really excited about that. And Precision Matters is the theme for Thursday's episode. So join us at 1 p.m. And thanks again for joining today. And those who were very smart on the trivia, I'll reach out via email with details on how to collect your prize. So thanks again for watching and have a great week.
Thank you very much, Kyle.